So I've got Dora, and I'm going to show you the first step that I use to introduce the horse to the Bosel hackamore. Now what I have on her right now is not really a traditional Bosel hackamore. It's more of a breaking hackamore, or like a Western style bitless bridle. It doesn't have a core, and it just is kind of some braided rawhide. But I've found personally that putting the horses in something like this for a ride or two and then transitioning to the hackamore, they do much better than going straight into the Bosel. So I'm not going to give you an extensive history of the Bosel, but I want you to kind of have a little bit of an idea of what and why and how. So a lot of training systems now really don't make use of the Bosel, but traditionally it was a really invaluable piece of the puzzle. So normally they would start their horses in a snaffle bit, and then usually around about 4 years old, which conveniently is usually the time that horses are teething the worst, they would put them into the Bosel. And then from there they would upgrade into a curb bit. And so the Bosel really helps the horse to be a lot lighter on their face and have to really pay attention to the rider's body, and where your upper body is pointing for the turn, and then also your leg cues and your shifts in weight, where you're looking. The horse has to really pay more attention to all of those kinds of body cues. And also it teaches them to neck rein really well. I really like using the Bosel to teach a neck rein, and then when you go into a curb bit, it already makes sense to them. So what I have on her right now is just the, like I said, kind of a Western style bitless bridle, and then I also have a snaffle bit on. For two reasons I like to do that, at least the first couple of times. It doesn't have to always be that way, but for the first couple of times in a bitless bridle or in a Bosel, I like to have the snaffle on for clarification. So that way, if the horse is a little bit confused about something or they're not understanding what I'm asking, then I can pick up my snaffle bit reins and clarify this is what I wanted. Also for safety, okay, is the second reason, and the most important, because if you have a horse that you're just starting out in a Bosel, or you're just starting in a bitless bridle, and they're not really sensitive to it just yet, you want to have something that if there was an emergency, that you could get your horse pulled around and stopped, okay? So you certainly can by all means develop lightness in a bitless bridle and lightness in a Bosel to be able to do that. Absolutely. But just for safety, I like to have a snaffle bit on just in case. So what I'm going to do to start with is I'm going to pick up the reins on the hackamore, the little bitless bridle here. And I'm just going to ask her to tip her head around. But I really don't want her moving. I just want her to tip her head. So I'm going to stay with her, even though she's being very light. I'm going to stay with her until she can stand. Good girl. Good. Okay, and then we'll go to the other side. And you probably, I don't know if you can see it from as far away as we are right now, but as we're riding around, you probably will notice that these are also not Mikati reins, and they're kind of tied to it a little bit funny. They're not really tied to how a Bosel would actually have the Mikati reins tied. Good girl, good. Okay, so now I'm going to pick up both reins from kind of up above, and I'm going to ask her to take a few steps backwards. And so I'm just going to use a light bumping with both hands. Good girl. Good. Good. Great job. Good girl. Okay. So since she's light, I'm going to go ahead and get on. And generally, a horse that is light to a snaffle bit and that's light to a halter is not going to have any problem with a Bosel or a bitless bridle in general. Good girl. Good. So, same thing now from on top of her. Got an itch. I'm just going to ask her to tip her head. And it's a little bit different angle now that I'm on top. Good girl. Ooh. I'm going to wait for her to stop. Good. So I like to do it again once I get on, even though I already checked in on the ground. Good. Good girl. Good. Now I'm going to use both reins and ask her for a couple steps back. Good. Good girl. Great job. Okay, so now I'm going to walk off. And how I use the bitless bridle reins is to, you keep your hands together, almost pretend like you've got handcuffs on. And that's where that neck rein comes in. And I use a little bit of outside leg, and there I didn't even have to touch her face at all. Just the neck rein in my leg was enough to ask her to turn. So now I'll ask for a right turn, and if she doesn't respond as quickly as I like, then you use a bumping. In a snaffle bit, you use a steady pressure. You don't want to bump in a snaffle bit. And it's not a jerking, but it's a bumping. If you use steady pressure a lot in a Boselle, then you're going to ruin the Boselle horse. You're not going to have a horse that's light on the Boselle because you can damage the nerves in their nose. The Boselle is placed in a sensitive area, okay? So you don't want to jerk hard, but you don't want to have a lot of steady pressure. It's a give and take. Good girl. Good. So I'm just going to practice a couple of turns back and forth and just do some serpentines and just really have her get a good feel for it. And she's doing great going off of that neck rein in my leg. But because I already have used my leg in the snaffle bit and used my body, she already understands that. And so it's not totally confusing to her. Even though she's got different equipment on her face, she has the basic idea of what I want. Maybe I'll practice a couple stops. Ooh. Good. And the same thing with the stomping. It's not a pressure and hold. It's a bump, bump, bump with every step. So from the time that I ask the horse to whoa, every step forward that they take from there, it's a bump with both reins. Ooh, bump, bump. Good. See how that works? So every step forward then is a bumping on both reins. And I'm not, using really big hands. I'm not jerking on her, but you're creating lightness is the point. Ooh, much better. See, and then that time she stopped and I didn't have to touch her face at all. Good girl. Good. Okay, so now I'm going to pick up the trot and go into that little serpentine I was doing again and just practice some turns at a trot. And I'm actually going to pick up these snaffle reins. I'm not going to use them, but I'm just going to pick them up in my hand so that while I'm trotting, they're not flopping around too loose. And she's kind of searching for me. I don't know if you noticed, but she's a little wiggly. And I've been riding her in the snaffle, and I actually did put her in a little pelham bit with 2 double reins. I've been riding her with a good amount of contact. And with the Boselle, your contact is all just your seat and legs. You don't really hold contact on the Boselle much at all. And so she's kind of searching for me a little bit, going, hold on, where's that contact that's communicating with me? And I go, okay, it's there, but you got to listen to my seat and legs is what it is. It's not going to be on your face so much. And that's how you get that lightness, that you're not having to pull on your horse, that they're responding to you and staying with you. And you see how now as she's getting used to it, and I'm guiding her a little bit more with my legs, because I'm going to have to adjust to her needs as well. And so you see how now she's staying with me a little bit better. And I do have the snaffle reins in my hand, but I have them loose because I don't want to bump the snaffle bit, okay? So I have them loose so that if I bump the hackamore, it's not touching the snaffle. So I just picked them up so that they're not flopping around too much. But I don't have any contact on them. I'm not using them at all. I'm just getting them out of the way. Okay, so now let's try a circle, which is going to be a little bit harder without that contact. But I'm going to use my body, and I'm going to put my body in the position of a circle and see if she'll follow me. And I'll make little adjustments, and I'll use the hackamore to support, but she's not going to have that same level of contact that she did in the snaffle. Good girl. So I'm just going to play with her now. She's doing really well, and I'm going to do some different figures and stuff. Go straight, do some circles, do some figure eights maybe, cut across the arena, and I'm just going to play with her and get her used to it even more, where she's even lighter on it. And then she could probably just go right up in the next ride, since she's so light to this and paying real good attention. She could probably go right to a real Boselle. If a horse struggles with this a little bit, then I don't put them in the Boselle. I like them to understand this first. Is it necessary? No, but it just is how I like to approach it. Good. So in a figure eight and in serpentines, she's got to change her bend. And the most challenging things, and for me anyway, different people might have different experiences, but for me, some of the most challenging things about the hackamore, usually stopping's fine, getting a turn, that's usually fine, but changing bend while going straight and actually going straight can be some of the hardest things, because you know, when you have contact, you kind of just set those reins and set your legs, and you know, you have that straightness, you just create that chute with your contact that horse has to move straight through. But in the hackamore, because you don't really hold that same level of contact on the face, you only have your body to create the straightness. And if you try to correct with the hackamore, then they usually will over exaggerate and you end up wibbly wobbling all over the place. And so if I can get her, like she's doing a great job, if I get her doing some figure eights and changing her bend really nicely off of my leg, and I'm still using some hand position, I still pick up on that new inside rein a little bit, but it's just a little bit different feel, and she's doing great with it. So I'm going to turn her up center line now and see how we can ride a straight line. Oh, she's not doing bad at all. Good girl. Good. Good girl. Good. Good girl. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and ask her to stop from a trot. And same thing, each step from the time I say whoa is a bump with both reins. Ooh, good. And I just gave her one small bump just to support her for a minute. Good girl, nicely done. Yeah, very good job. Just stand. Ooh, ooh, good. Nicely done. Good girl. So I'm going to go ahead and play with my body control stuff. Ooh, I do want her to stand though. I'm not asking her to go anywhere. Yeah, just stand. I'm going to play with my body control stuff a little bit, and I'm going to see her turn on the haunches in the Boselle. Usually, I've generally seen putting them into the Boselle really improves the turn on the haunches. Whether you've got a horse that's good at it already or struggles with it, usually the Boselle really improves it a lot. So I'm going to go in a circle once or twice, and then she can do it from a stop. But I'm going to kind of start in the beginning again because we're on new equipment. And so I'm just kind of working on getting that bend a little bit. And then I'm going to sit back and bring my outside aids over. What a good girl. What a good girl. She's got a little counter bent. Good, there. Good girl. And so counter bent means if I'm doing a turn on the haunches to the right, then she should have a very slight bend to the right. Mostly straight, but just ever so slight bend to the right if I'm going to the right. And so when she tipped her head a little to the left, she gets uncoordinated and off balance. So now I'm going to the left, so I want a very slight bend to the left. And I've got her going in a circle a little bit. And then I just bring my outside aids on and sit back. Nicely done. Nice. She's moving her hind out a little bit, so I'm going to get after with this leg. Nice. Nice. There. Good. And so we're just getting a feel of it with the hackamore, because she's confusing when I'm asking her over. Sometimes she confuses that I want her to take a step backwards. So it's just a little different feel. And I'm just going to stay here and play with it. Good. 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 And I've got my hand further out to the side than I would in a snaffle because of the fact that she's there. Good girl. Good. Good girl. Because when my hand was in the same position as it was in the snaffle, she was confusing a little, thinking that when I put more pressure, just walk. Good girl. That I wanted her to back up. And so if you could kind of see, that one wasn't quite as smooth. And so I supported her and moved my hand further out. So she understood that it's not pressure coming backwards, it's going to the left. So let's go ahead to the left again. And you use your hands in a much, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this, in a wider variety of ways, I guess. You know, with the snaffle, you generally are going to keep your hands right there in front of you. It's very, very fine-tuned movements. Whereas with the hackamore, you might be up, you might be down, you may be out to the side, and so it's not necessarily that you're using more pressure on your horse. It's just as in order to communicate with them what you want, then you can change your angle a lot more. Good, good. Yes, that was very nice. Good girl. Good. Okay, so now we're going to go from a stop, and I'll go ahead to the right first. Ooh, good, nice stop. And I'll just see if I can get her to tip her head just a little to the right. Just ever so slightly, and she's wanting to back up. There, good. 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 Well done. Good. Okay, now just tip her head ever so slightly to the left. And I'll ask her to the left. Good girl. Good. 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 Nicely done. Good girl. Great job. Very well coordinated. Good girl. Good. Okay, so now we'll play with our side pass a little bit. Now that's going to be interesting because her struggle in the side pass has been wanting to just run with her shoulder and not keep that hind under her. And with a snaffle bit, it's a lot easier for me to shut down the shoulder and say, no, you're not going to run that shoulder out, you're going to move your hind with it. With the hackamore, it's going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to play with it, and you know, I'm going to be kind of constantly making some little adjustments until I find what works. Oh, good girl. Okay, now I just have the hind, so let me see if I can get her whole body moving. Good, good, good. Ooh. Okay, so her head was tipped a little more than what I normally like, but that was pretty good for her. I'm not going to correct her on that right now because she kept her front and her hind connected really well. So now I'm going to side pass off of my right leg. Good. And just keep my leg on and see if I can get her to move her whole body. There you go. Good. Great job. Good. Good. Great job. Good. Little smidge crooked, but not bad. Good girl. Good. Great job. So she's doing really well, so I think I'm going to lope her a little bit. And depending on how the horse is, if I don't feel like I've got really good control in the hackamore and in the bitless bridle, then I won't lope them, or I'll put the reins down and pick up my snaffle reins and lope them. But since I've got some really good control on her and she's listening really well, I am going to pick up those snaffle reins just again so that they're not flopping around. But I'm going to start by riding her off of the hackamore, and if we can finish off of the hackamore is great. If she needs more support, or if she's getting confused, or if she's having trouble with her leads, which she does sometimes, or if she's not wanting to stay out on the circle, then I may just adjust and go to the snaffle, because I'm gonna meet her where she's at, okay, and make it the best experience for her. And so if she's struggling a little bit, then I'll go ahead and go to the snaffle, but I'm gonna see how she does just off of the hackamore. And I'm actually going to go ahead, I'm going to switch around, and because we're doing something new, I'm going to go to her easier side first, which is the left, just to kind of make it a little bit easier for her this first time. And we'll see how she does going to the left. Good girl. Good girl. Good. Okay, so now I'm going to bring her down, and I'm going to correct her and make her turn because I wanted her to stay in that circle. There you go. Good girl. Easy. There you go. There you go. So she kind of, again, wanted to pull off to the other side of the arena, and I had to use some bumping to get her to stay in the circle here. Better. Good. Good. Trot. Trot. Good. Now that was certainly not a perfect 20-meter circle by any means, but that's not what we're looking for right now this first time. So I was able to keep good control of her. She came down when I asked her to, and I kept her in that circle. I had that one correction. Second time around was a little bit better, and then the third time around she got it. Good. So I'm going to bring her down a little bit again. You can see how uncoordinated she can be sometimes trying to go to the right. So I'm going to bring her down, balance her, ask again. Good. Great job. Good girl. Good. Good. Trot. Excellent job. Good girl. Good. Ooh. Nice. Hold. Good job. You can see the other thing with the Boselle really improves their stops a lot too. So the turn on the haunches, the stops, and reining, it really improves that. And so, you know, if you can transition your horse into a Boselle for a couple months and then put him in back into the snaffle or back into the curb, you're going to be totally amazed at the new level of lightness and, you know, the fine tuning that you can get just with this new piece of equipment. Good girl. So, and like I said, since I've got good control of her and she understands it very well, I could go ahead and put her into a real Boselle instead of this little breaking hackamore, and I'm sure she'd do very well with it. And so we'll probably go ahead and film that one too, because sometimes their action can be a little bit different, because the real Boselle is going to have it's stiffer than this is, and it's going to be a little bit firmer. And so we'll probably go ahead and film that as well. The next ride, that's going to be her first time in a real Boselle. But overall, I'm very pleased with her, and she's coming along really, really nicely.